The UKIP bust-up that lands a leadership favourite in hospital. Stephen Woolfe was involved in a heated row in the European Parliament with another UKIP MEP. He later collapsed and was rushed to hospital for a brain scan.
It's two grown men getting involved in an altercation. It's not very seemly behaviour.
Also tonight, the UN warns eastern Aleppo faces total destruction with thousands killed.
Full speed ahead for fracking as a site in Lancashire gets the go-ahead.
And the new warning over the 3 million tumble dryers that could catch fire.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mark Austin and Charlene White.
Good evening. There were extraordinary scenes in the European Parliament in Strasbourg today. A bust-up between two UKIP MEPs, with one ending up in hospital. Stephen Woolfe, who's tipped as a potential leader, had a heated row at a party meeting over claims he was going to defect to the Conservatives. Sometime later, he collapsed and was rushed to hospital with suspected bleeding on the brain.
Mr. Woolfe has now regained consciousness and is feeling fine, but serious questions remain tonight over the nature of the party and what the search for a new leader is doing to it. Paul Davis has more.
The man expected to be UKIP's next leader, lying prone in the European Parliament. What led to this distressing scene, now the subject of an inquiry. When Stephen Woolfe collapsed on a walkway in the Parliament building, the red-coated medical staff at first feared the worst. As they tended him, reports were already emerging of an earlier heated argument involving other UKIP MEPs. One unconfirmed account said Mr. Woolfe had been punched. As an ambulance rushed him to hospital, Nigel Farage issued a statement that referred to an altercation that was deeply regretted. Later, after visiting Stephen Woolfe in hospital, he said there would now be an inquiry.
It's two grown men getting involved in an altercation. It's not very seemly behaviour, but I'm not today going to get involved in the blame game and name names and say who did what, but it shouldn't have happened.
From his hospital bed, Stephen Woolfe issued a statement saying, "The CT scan has shown that there is no blood clot in the brain. At the moment I'm feeling brighter, happier and smiling as ever. I'm sitting up and said to be looking well." Favourite to become UKIP's next leader, Stephen Woolfe had only yesterday talked of uniting the party.
During the elections, it's the nature of elections for people to say things that they don't mean and then have to roll back from that.
A Clear the Air meeting was held this morning in this room, but it's understood there was an argument with UKIP defence spokesman Mike Hookham over talk of defections to the Tory party. Colleagues are dismayed.
I can't say I'm surprised, though, given what I've heard recently in terms of just how much animosity there is amongst the MEPs and at the top of the party, and I think that's something that we need to really address very, very soon.
Now they know he's getting better, party colleagues can start to worry about the image this presents of what they call the true opposition. Paul Davis, ITV News.
Well, our national editor, Allegra Stratton, joins us now. Allegra, by any standards, quite extraordinary developments.
I've never heard anything like it in political life, that you have two senior politicians involved in a brawl that sees one of them hospitalised and very seriously so. Nigel Farage clearly aware of this, so he's announced an inquiry into what happened and when. But there are questions being asked about whether somebody who allows themselves to get involved in an altercation has the judgment to be party leader. Now, on Monday, UKIP's ruling body will meet to announce, well, to decide what rules this next leadership contest should be fought under. Stephen Woolfe has lots of enemies on that group. They may decide to try and stop him running. If they do, breaking just now, UKIP's major donor, Aaron Banks, has said if Stephen Woolfe is blocked from running, then he will leave the party. He's their major donor. This really is a party at breaking point.
All right, Allegra, thank you very much indeed.
There was a stark warning from the UN's Syria envoy today that Aleppo could be destroyed by Christmas, with thousands of children and civilians killed. Staffan de Mistura said it was in danger of turning into an atrocity like Rwanda or Srebrenica.
But tonight, President Assad remains defiant, vowing to fight until all the rebels left Aleppo, and says he wants to retake the whole of Syria. Here's our correspondent, Emma Murphy.
This is the ground offensive so feared in eastern Aleppo. Having warned civilians to leave or face an inevitable fate, regime troops are now forcing their way through the streets. They've not yet crushed the rebel uprising, but they are close to doing so. If you are looking for a metaphor, the tattered rebel flag in the ruins is surely it. Inside these destroyed buildings are 250,000 people, now braced for what is ahead. Among them, 100,000 children. Unable to offer any viable solution, even the world's diplomats can offer little more than a sigh.
Aleppo, the city of Aleppo, as such, and in particular, eastern Aleppo.
And a chilling assessment of what will follow.
The bottom line is, in maximum 2 months, 2.5 months, the city of eastern Aleppo, at this rate, may be totally destroyed. We're talking about old city in particular. And thousands of Syrian civilians, not terrorists, will be killed. And many of them wounded, and thousands of them may try to become refugees.
In the past 2 weeks, nearly 400 people have been killed, 1,200 have been injured, and hospitals have been attacked. And yet, from the man who is accused of targeting them, a denial.
We don't have policy to destroy hospitals or schools or any such facility.
Whoever attacks hospitals, they are guilty of war crimes.
Of course, by international law it is. I mean, hospitals have immunity.
Many in Aleppo and beyond will struggle to accept those words. Emma Murphy, ITV News.
Well, all this week, ITV News has been highlighting the suffering of civilians and children trapped in Aleppo. Today, the UN released new figures showing the scale of the violence.
In the past 2 weeks, at least 376 people have been killed there. Most of them were civilians, including many children. And 1,266 people have been wounded.
The Archbishop of Canterbury tonight described the situation in Aleppo as demonic and said the violence against people there showed contempt for the human spirit. Justin Welby spoke to Julie Etchingham during his visit to Rome to meet the Pope.
What is happening in Syria, in bits of Iraq, is so unspeakable, so appalling, particularly Aleppo at the moment. And it's more than frustrating. We always have the sense if only someone did X, then it would change things. But of course, no one knows what X is. And I think when you see the breakdown in diplomatic relations over the last few days, the cessation of talks between the Russians and the Americans, you realize that this is not because the people who are doing those talks are hopeless or namby-pamby, it's just they've run into a brick wall.
Is there evil at work in Aleppo in the sense that you would understand it?
What is being done is evil both in the strict theological sense and in the sort of general sense. It is demonic. It is the absolute contempt for the human spirit, for the dignity of the human being. It is the brushing aside of the poor and the weak and the fragile in a way that is as bad as anything we've seen in the last century. It compares with some of the great atrocities of the last century, and they have been terrible atrocities.
The Archbishop of Canterbury speaking to Julie Etchingham. And on our Facebook page, our correspondent Emma Murphy will be taking your questions about the siege of Aleppo.
Here, the government has given the go-ahead for so-called fracking at a rural site in Lancashire. The landmark ruling overturned an earlier decision by the local council, which blocked it on environmental concerns. And, as our science correspondent Allegra reports, other applications could now succeed.
This dairy farm in Fylde in Lancashire has been in Robert Sanderson's family for 3 generations. He's faced hard times before, but today Robert woke up to a new threat. Despite local objections, the government will allow fracking in fields nearby.
I'm angry about it. I'm disappointed with the government. It's destroying communities, it's destroying livelihoods, businesses, and the balance is completely outweighed. Well, what do we actually set to lose to what we're going to gain?
The local council had blocked shale gas company Quadrilla from drilling under these fields. The company appealed to the community secretary Sajid Javid, who has now overturned the council's verdict, saying the shale gas industry could power economic growth. That's good news for Quadrilla. The company also said it wanted to address local concerns.
If you look at what we're actually doing and you look at the amount of monitoring that we're going to do, we'll monitor air quality, we'll monitor noise, traffic, ecology, lighting. The data will be there to reassure people and to demonstrate that if they do have fears, that those are misplaced. It will be safe.
Quadrilla will now begin tests here to work out if the cost of extracting the gas is worth the effort. There'll be 4 wells drilled here at this site. Each one will go up to 3 kilometres deep and 2 kilometres horizontally. Engineers will pump high-pressure water, sand and chemicals into the rocks underground to fracture them and release the shale gas. If everything goes well, a site like this could hold dozens of wells. Locals have protested many proposed fracking sites across the country. Today's decision by the government will send those protesters a clear signal.
I think it seems now that it is likely that there will be more shale gas permissions granted in the country, and I think Quadrilla itself and other competitors like iGas, for example, will have been watching this very closely and will have been taking a lot of notes on how they can satisfy the government.
Fracking will begin here next year, and a final decision on a second site nearby is due soon. With so much gas under the ground, this could be the start of a revolution in energy. Alok Jha, ITV News, Lancashire.
US forecasters are warning Hurricane Matthew could strengthen to a catastrophic Category 4 superstorm as it approaches the Florida coast. It's already claimed 140 lives in the Caribbean. Our correspondent Martin Geisler is in West Palm Beach in Florida for us. Martin, are people there fearing the worst?
Yeah, people are extremely worried at the moment, not surprisingly, because the first bands of this hurricane have begun sweeping through. We're in a break at the moment, but we've had some intense bursts of heavy rain, and there have been stern words from the governor of Florida, who said, evacuate, evacuate, evacuate. This storm could kill. And in the last few minutes, President Obama has declared a state of emergency in large parts of this state. We were in a shelter this morning, a hurricane shelter, one of many up and down this Atlantic coast of Florida. Hundreds of people bedding down on a school gym because they don't trust their own houses to stand up to this storm. People were reasonably relaxed in the early part of this week, but minds were focused overnight when news emerged of what this storm has done on its way here. As you said, people now only just reaching the outlying areas in Haiti that it passed through. Well over 100 dead there. And then pictures also from the Bahamas. Hurricane Matthew ripped through Nassau in the early hours of this morning, and it's continuing to do so there. It was Category 3 there. It's picking up in intensity. It'll be Category 4 when it hits here. Gusts of up to 160 miles an hour. There is a very wild night ahead here.
Martin, thank you.
Right, still to come on the ITV Evening News. Burning down the house, the new inquiry into the fire risk tumble dryers.
And talking heads, we get the view from America 1 month before the US election. Well, these stories and more after the break. Welcome back. ITV News has learned almost 3 million faulty tumble dryers are still in people's homes, despite them causing hundreds of fires. Only a quarter of the Hotpoint, Indesit and Creda machines have been replaced since we first reported the fire risk a year ago. And as consumer editor Chris Troy reports, the manufacturer is being criticised for insisting the appliances are still safe to use.
For months, ITV News has reported fires all over the country where Hotpoint, Creeder and Indesit tumble dryers are the suspected cause. Today, there was terrifying evidence of the danger, as fire officers said this tower block fire was started by a tumble dryer. Now, we've established how many homes remain at risk. Investigations into this fire continue. The family in South Wales says it was caused by their recalled Hotpoint dryer, and they're furious so many are still in use.
It's ridiculous. How can they say it's safe to use it? My daughter was in the house, and this just goes to show 30 seconds. That's all the difference could have been. It made the living room basically between 800 and 1,000 degrees, and basically we've lost everything, and there's nothing they could do.
New figures obtained by ITV News show of 5.3 million tumble dryers manufactured with the fault. Only 900,000 have so far been replaced or repaired by the manufacturer. While they claim many have since gone out of use, that still leaves 2.9 million still in people's homes and still a danger. There are growing demands for more action to protect customers, and today came a significant announcement. Government says it will now start a working party into product recalls, but one has already been completed, and its author says it was ignored.
This new working group is on top of everything else they've done the last 2 years, which hasn't resulted in anything positive.
Our figures suggest millions of dryers with this fire risk are still in people's homes tonight. And though the company says it's doing all it can, many experts strongly disagree. And this is where we would like to interview the company responsible for the Hotpoint, Indesit and Creeder brands. Once again, our request has been refused. The firm says those machines are safe to use as long as they are not unattended, but the fire brigade disagrees. It says if you have one, you should switch it off. And the latest we've discovered is that trading standards have now recommended that the firm undertakes a re-evaluation of risk.
Chris, thank you. Well, to find out if your tumble dryer is affected, do go to our website.
Now, a 15-year-old boy who was shot in the head while riding a motorbike is in a critical condition in hospital this evening. The teenager, who's from Sunderland, is being treated in Newcastle's Royal Infirmary. A 39-year-old man and a 16-year-old boy have been arrested.
And Jeremy Corbyn has appointed Baroness Shami Chakrabarti as Shadow Attorney General. The Labour leader is reshuffling his frontbench team this evening.
Now, we heard earlier how politics here can turn violent, but in America, the battle for the White House has become one of the most bitterly fought and divisive in history.
Despite many predictions to the contrary, Donald Trump is neck and neck with Hillary Clinton, with just over a month until the election. Well, to find out why, our Washington correspondent Robert Moore went to Ohio.
Ohio may look tranquil, but underneath the surface it is seething and leaning towards Donald Trump. Cities like Youngstown and Cleveland have suffered major job losses. The steel factories have closed, and many union workers, former Democrats like Mark Gillette and Gino DeFabio, are now committed Trump supporters.
I've been waiting myself for years for someone like Trump to come up.
They talk of personal tragedy when friends lost their livelihoods.
3 men in my department committed suicide. They left home every day to go work in a mill, and when it was over, they had no hope. And when they lost hope, that's when they ended their lives.
We've been ignored and ignored and ignored. I talked to a lot of people, union guys, people who would never, ever say they would vote for a Republican, ever. And they're all in.
Perhaps more surprisingly, in suburban Ohio, Trump has many converts as well. Some detest Hillary Clinton and have shocking views of President Obama.
I really feel if Hillary Clinton would win, you'd see a revolution in this country, because people will not stand for what she stands for and what she'll try to do to us. It'll be the gun owners and their rights protected against, and this is my worst fear, Obama's Sharia law people.
This election is proving extraordinarily divisive, pitching neighbor against neighbor, as you find out if you canvass with Trump activists.
Hello. Hello, sir. We're campaigning for Donald Trump.
Hey, get the hell out of here.
Really?
I would never vote for that racist in my entire life. You can vote for that pig if you want to, not me.
It might be a race war if this cat get in there.
And from minority communities living in fear of a Trump victory, there are dire warnings.
If Donald Trump gets into the White House, there's going to be urban explosions in the United States. So there's no doubt that there's going to be urban insurrections and violence. There's no doubt about it in my mind.
So there is alarm on both sides of the divide, adding to the sense that next month's election is a crossroads for this state and for America. Robert Moore, ITV News in Ohio.
And Robert's full report, Trump's America, Will It Happen?, is on the Tonight programme at 7:30 this evening. Well worth a watch.
Definitely. Well, that's all for now. Tom's here with news at 10.
But from all the evening news team, have a very good night.
Goodbye.